What's up, Solo Cups? My name is John Solo, and I'm coming at you today from my new home. As many of you know, last month I made the move from Florida back to Illinois, then I spent a few weeks in purgatory trying to establish the next chapter of my life. It's been a long month and a half of moving, planning, and moving again, but the good news is I'm finally settled in my new apartment, hence the new couch and background. I really can't express how much I appreciate your guys' patience throughout these past few weeks, so I thought I'd pay you back by unpacking the origins of a story I see requested more than almost any other, Coraline. Well, it's partly to show my appreciation and partly because it's October. Halloween is this month, so it's only appropriate that we cover something spoopy. Now, you probably noticed I put part 1 in the title, and that's because the Coraline movie is based on a chapter book of the same name by Neil Gaiman, and it's just a little too long for me to cover in one episode, at least if I wanted the episode to be any good. So this one is going to be a two-parter, Solo Cups. Today I'm going to give a brief summary of the movie, followed by a breakdown of the first 6 chapters, and next week we'll cover the remaining chapters as well as some of the real-life inspiration for the novel. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to get started. As always, don't forget to give that like button some love if you haven't already, subscribe with notifications turned on to be one of the first to know when part 2 drops, and most importantly, enjoy. The movie opens with a young girl named Coraline and her family moving into an apartment in a very old house. Due to her neighbors being totally wackadoo and her parents working around the clock, Coraline finds herself alone and bored most of the time. But one night she discovers that a tiny door, which she previously thought was sealed off by bricks, is actually a portal to an other world that's far more colorful and fun than the real one and is complete with a pair of other parents who show her all the attention she lacks at home. However, things in this other world aren't quite what they seem, and her other mother turns out to be a witch known as the Bedlam who traps children in her house, sews buttons into their eyes, and collects their souls. Just to reiterate, this is somehow a kid's movie. Coraline manages to escape this terrifying world, but she's forced to venture back after learning the Bedlam abducted her parents. Our heroine then challenges the Bedlam to a sort of scavenger hunt, where she has to find the eyes of the Bedlam's other victims as well as her parents, or she'll be trapped in the other world forever. With the help of an overly sarcastic cat and a magic stone that she was given by her neighbors, Coraline finds each eye in a different part of the world as well as her parents stuck in a snow globe. Realizing that even if she wins fairly, the Bedlam still won't let her go, Coraline chucks her cat friend at the witch's face to distract her, grabs the snow globe, and escapes back to her world. However, the adventure isn't over just yet. The Bedlam's weird, scary hand also managed to escape, and it's up to Coraline to conquer the evil force once and for all. She ventures out to the old well on the edge of her property to discard the key, but the hand follows her out there and attacks her. Fortunately, her neighbor Wybie shows up in the nick of time to save her and help her destroy the hand, and they throw it down the well together. In the end, Coraline's parents finally come around and open up their minds to having some more fun, and that strange little community lives happily ever after. I mean, given the dark nature of the story, it probably wasn't happily ever after, but I really didn't know how else to end the summary. Which, by the way, I realize wasn't a perfect synopsis, but many of the details I just glossed over I'll be expanding on as I break down the book. And speaking of, I'm sure you guys are ready to get into the book, so let's do just that. So the book opens pretty similar to the movie, with Coraline exploring every nook and cranny of her new home. She also has the same wackadoo neighbors as in the movie, the former actresses Miss Spink and Forcible, as well as the crazy man who lives upstairs and trains circus mice. But in the book, his name is Mr. Bobo instead of Mr. Bobinski, and we don't learn that until the very end. There's also some differences regarding the magic door. To start, she actually finds it in the very first sentence of chapter 1, and in this version it's not a tiny door hidden behind wallpaper, but rather a big carved wooden door at the far corner of the drawing room. Later on in the chapter, she convinces her mom to unlock it, only to find out it's been bricked up from when the house was converted into apartments. Her mom then walks away without bothering to lock it because what's the point? Of course there was a point though, and that night when Coraline was lying awake in bed, she heard the door creak open. Then when she went to see what it was, she saw an eerie looking shadow speed down the hall. Now Coraline is way braver than I was as a kid, so she followed the shadow to the drawing room where she found the door slightly ajar but still sealed up with bricks. Then she closed the door, went back to bed, and had a dream where little black shapes with red eyes and sharp yellow teeth sang her a song. We are small but we are many. We are many, we are small. We were here before you rose, we will be here when you fall. Not creepy at all. The next day, Coraline continues wandering around the property and has some strange interactions with her neighbors. First, there's Mr. Bobo, who delivers a message from the mice saying don't go through the door. What's interesting about this is that when he tells her that in the book, she acts like she doesn't know what he's talking about. But in the movie, she goes, oh, the one behind the wallpaper? I'm not sure why that change was made. Maybe they thought it'd be too contradictory and confusing for the kids watching, but that's just a guess. Coraline then has some tea with Miss Spink and Forcible, and they read her tea leaves, which apparently predict that she's in great danger. To protect her from this danger, Miss Spink gives her a little stone with a hole in it from a jar that's sitting on their mantle. You might remember that this happens much later in the movie, and the stone is seemingly carved out of old taffy. Now, for those curious about what this stone is supposed to be, let me shed some light on this mystery. Small stones with naturally created holes in their centers are called hag stones, witch stones, serpent eggs, or adder stones, and were once thought to possess several magical properties. By looking through the hole, one could supposedly see through witch disguises and traps. They could also be used as a cure for certain illnesses, prevent nightmares, and were generally worn as a charm to protect against witchcraft and evil. The reason they were called adder stones has to do with how people thought they were made. An adder is a kind of snake, and many believed the stones were the hardened saliva of a large number of serpents massing together, with the perforations being caused by their tongues. Just a bit different than being carved out of old, expired taffy. So the next day, when Coraline is alone and bored at home, she unlocks the bricked up door once again. But this time, the door isn't bricked up. This time, it opened up to a large, dark hallway that apparently smelled very old and very slow. So no bright blue light and wacky funhouse tunnel in this version. Naturally, Coraline entered the dark hallway because why wouldn't you walk right into something that you thought was both ancient and alive? And on the other side, she found a house that looked exactly like hers with a few subtle differences, including brighter colors and more sinister looking paintings. And it's in this house that she meets her other mother, a woman that looks almost exactly like her mother, but she has paler skin, is taller and thinner, and has buttons for eyes. The other mother is also far more nurturing than her real mother and made Coraline a delicious lunch. The girl was starving, so she sat down with both of her other parents and ate as much as she could. Then after lunch, she went to her room where she found the singing rats from her dream waiting under her bed and met the other Mr. Bobo, who was even stranger in this world than the last. Then Coraline went exploring, and as you might expect, things only got stranger from here. Soon after going outside, Coraline runs into a black cat that she also found sneaking around her property in the real world. Only in the other world he talks, and he sounds about as pretentious as you'd imagine most cats to be. After a brief and irritating conversation with him, she walks down to the other Miss Spink and Forcible's apartment, where she watches the oddest theater performance she'd ever seen, alongside an audience of Scottish Terriers. There's some bad music playing, some nonsensical dialogue that sounds like it came straight out of Wonderland, and it ends with a knife-throwing stunt. Coraline is chosen to stand in front of a target with a balloon on her head, while a blindfolded Miss Forcible throws a knife at the balloon and pops it. Personally, I like this version a lot more than the ridiculous musical performance in Trapeze Act. They for some reason replaced it with in the movie, but that's just me. After sitting back down, Coraline learns from one of the dogs in the audience that this act goes on literally forever, so she walks out. Afterward, she returns to her other parents, who are waiting for her in the garden with huge, totally not terrifying smiles on their faces. The couple then tells Coraline that she could stay in their world always and forever if she agrees to have buttons sewn into her eyes. It's worth noting here, this is only Coraline's first visit to the other world, as where in the movie, they don't propose this until her third visit. They stretched it out because, you know, the movie had to be longer than 45 minutes. Well, Coraline rejects this tempting offer pretty much instantly, can't imagine why, then returns through the magic door to her real home and locks it behind her. What's odd about when she gets back to the real world though is that her parents are nowhere to be found and they still haven't returned by the next night. Around 4 a.m. the following morning, Coraline is woken up by the black cat swatting at her face. Then she follows him down the hall to a full-length mirror, and when she looks into it, she sees her parents staring back at her with great fear in their eyes. While she didn't like it, Coraline knew immediately what she had to do. She changed out of her pajamas, grabbed some candles for light and apples for food, and put the stone the old ladies gave her in her pocket. Also, while getting ready for her adventure, she tells the cat a little story, one I really like actually, and I wish they included it in the movie because it has a great message. To put it simply, one day while she was walking through a wasteland with her dad, they stepped on a wasp nest, and her dad told her to run away while he stayed behind so he would get stung and she wouldn't. Then, after they both had gotten away from the wasps, her father realized he dropped his glasses, so he had to go back and find them. And this is where my favorite line of the book comes in. He said that wasn't brave of him, just standing there and being stung. It wasn't brave because he wasn't scared. It was the only thing he could do. But going back again to get his glasses, when he knew the wasps were there, when he was really scared, that was brave. When you're scared but you still do it anyway, that's brave. That message repeats itself several times throughout the rest of the story, and if there's any moral to be gathered from Coraline, this is it. So I was really disappointed when I watched the movie and the only reference to it was a single line of dialogue.
Be strong, Coraline.
It just seems like a missed opportunity to convey something really positive and encouraging to the kid audience the movie was supposedly intended for. Anyway, Coraline ventures back to her other home where she confronts her other mother, who of course denies all responsibility. The mother then orders a rat to bring her the key to the magic door, she locks it, and then drops the key in her apron pocket, instead of swallowing it like in the movie. Then, being that she doesn't have much of a choice, Coraline goes to sleep in her other room. The next morning, Coraline changes out of her nightgown into some clothes that were in her other closet. And when she puts the magic stone in her pocket, she comments that her head cleared up a little, as if she had come out of some sort of fog. The power of the Adder Stone. She starts to explore the property with her partner in crime, the black cat, and while doing so learns that the other mother didn't recreate everything perfectly. She only made as much as she had to in order to fool Coraline, because she's a lazy Coraline also learns from the cat that the other mother is called the Bedlam, a word that means a scene of uproar and confusion, or a mental institution. How appropriate. When Coraline gets back in the house, the Bedlam proposes they do some mother-daughter things. Play some games, do some embroidery, sew buttons into her eyes, the usual. But Coraline says no, and the Bedlam gets furious. She picks up Coraline, carries her kicking and screaming down the hallway, and throws her into a dark place behind a mirror, leaving the girl shrouded in darkness and completely alone. In that SoloFam will do it for part 1 of Coraline Explained. Make sure to comment your thoughts on it down below, and especially to tune in next week when I break down the second half of the book, as well as some truly fascinating behind the scenes info that will no doubt enhance the way you watch the movie. In the meantime, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and share this video with any other diehard Coraline fans you know. I'd also recommend you follow me on social media, that's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, for regular updates about what content you can expect next and what I'm up to between videos. Until next time, everybody, my name is John Solo, and remember, John shot first.